Welcome to Coaching in Session,
where limits end and growth begins.
Hosted by Michael Rearden.
This is your space to challenge the ordinary,
unlock your potential,
and step boldly into your next chapter.
Your mindset journey continues.
Welcome, Dale Allen, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I am fantastic.
All right, today we're going to be talking about your work, and it's very similar to the work that I do. And I noticed this about myself maybe a month, maybe 2 months ago, where patterns are something that I'm really good at spotting. And you're a pattern spotter. And this is this idea where people don't necessarily know what they're doing unless it's put on a sheet of paper or they're reminded saying, hey, this is who you are. This is what you're doing. These are your blind spots. And we have gone all through our development, working on our identity, working on who we become every single day. But yet, some of us don't necessarily know our routines. We don't know our consistencies. And all of this is going to just lump us into the patterns that we do, the good and the bad. So today we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be looking at so many aspects of the human mind and just the human being in itself. But if you could, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and of course, how you help people?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I am Dale Allen. I'm many things, though. I am a partner and I'm a mom and I am a fitness lover. The world of work has me centered around, coaching. And what that looks like is the gift that I brought to that. So it's been 21 years. It's allowed me to really amplify a skill that I have, which is being able to see patterns. When I listen to people, even before they finish a sentence, I can hear and see what it is, what's the pattern that actually is keeping them stuck. And I also feel super gifted to help people find a way out and into new habits, new patterns. This has been really fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just like this idea where when someone is speaking, I know it happens with me quite a bit, is that we listen for the things that they're not saying, right? They try to avoid the areas where they want to bring some attention to. And I like to think of this as people will put skeletons in their closet. They'll sweep things under the rug. They'll allow things to pile up high in the corner. And it becomes a problem for later. It becomes a problem for tomorrow, for next week, next month, next year. And eventually all of that crap, I guess, for lack of better words, it can start to pile up. It can start to fester. And when it does, when it gets to that boiling part, the tipping point, then chaos ensues. It's like, oh man, where did this all come from? And it has come from a period of time when people haven't been taking action or being proactive in their personal development or just changing something that has been working for them. What is your, I guess you can say, awareness key where you help people say, hey, let's look at those dark spots. Let's look under the rug. Let's open the closet and see what's there.
Are you asking more, how do I do that? Or what's my way to do that?
Well, more so in how do you help people bring awareness to those areas?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'm going to answer it and then kind of explain a little bit. Okay. I ask people to share with me what's happening and what they're really looking for. And what I'm doing then as I'm listening is I'm listening for the disconnect between what they're really wanting and what's happening. And then I allow that to come to their awareness. So it's this way of like doing that weaving, right? Where it's like, oh, this is what you really want and this is what you're currently doing. And so now what's the relationship there really is the question. Like, what's the relationship between where you want to be or who you want to be and who you're being now or where you are right now. So that's always where I like to start. So I'm just like, tell me your story. Tell me what it is, And then the link to me is that question about what is the relationship between where you are now and where you want to be. And so that brings that awareness to them, It's just an opener.
Yeah. What I love about Coaching in Session is that even though I ask questions to kind of help the conversation go, because sometimes if you just leave everything open-ended, who knows what we're going to get. So I always like to have a little bit of direction. But there is no wrong answer here on Coaching in Session. If I ask, hey, what are you doing this week? And you go on and you start telling me about your TED Talk, I'm going to love every bit of what you gave me, because it's not so much about me me asking the question and being so rigid. I don't want our conversations to be rigid. And I think that's why people enjoy coaching a session, because it's a conversation where people don't know what they're going to get. Even though I have a very similar flow in all of the interviews I've done, it's always a surprise, the beginning, the middle, and the end, because some people can hash out old traumas and people can realize, wow, I'm going through that. Or they are going on a new venture and people would maybe have this idea in their mind saying, oh, I would love to go on that venture too. So it's this idea that there's so many humans who want to do something and they look for people who have done it, who have gone through it, or maybe can be that inspiration or that guide to help them along the way. And I just find that it's easier for a person to do things when they know it is possible. When it is something that's going to be for the first time or something that very few people have done, it's going to be maybe a bit of a challenge for people to say, okay, I'm going to dive into this. And this is where many people, they fall into this societal norm of, okay, I'm just going to get a 9-to-5 job. I'm going to go to college, and I'm not going to do much beyond what the dream of what most people are, to have a house, to have some kids, and maybe to retire at 65. And maybe at that time I could be happy. Where most people, they're doing a lot of things in their day that do not jive with the person they want to become. If they look in the mirror and they ask, who am I? They will become unrecognizable with the person they thought that they would be when they were young. So this idea that people can change for the better or for the worse, for the person that they want to be or the person that society tells them to be. How do you help people find their true person?
I think that's the power of coaching to me, right? Like I what I love about it, and I'd say how I help them find it, is coaching is so much about asking questions that we actually do know the answers to. That's the sweetest part about it. Hey, Michael, like, it's like you have that question, but it's like deep, 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 deep. It's buried somewhere. And what I love, bless everyone who thinks that, that we're magical, but actually we just have the gift of listening and the patience to listen and to ask the questions. So what I love about that is, like, when you talked about the 9-to-5, right? That some people are stuck in jobs that they cannot, like, that are killing them, right? Like, they cannot stand it, And when they come to coaching, they're coming to a space that allows them to name it. Like, how precious is that? That way? It's so precious that you're naming something that you have buried so deeply. And so it's a sacred relationship because you're naming something that in a way might be your own secret, but you're so ready to bring it out in the open, and you're wanting to know, what do I do with this now? What do I do with this message that is in me? And I just think that's the biggest gift. So helping people ask themselves those questions and giving them a container, a space to be able to do that. And then the beauty that arises when that eruption happens is brilliant. But I also know that it's scary too, right? People say that to me sometimes. They'll say, well, but it's kind of scary. But this is what they're coming for that eruption too. And so I also love to, even before we really get into things, I also like to name, like you talked about being a mindset coach, I'd like to name what will naturally happen. Usually when people do that eruption, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I let all of that stuff out. And so then we start getting distracted from their goal and their intention of, like, this is really what I wanted to tease out. I want to figure out what my next move is. I want to leave my 9-to-5, where I want to work on my side hustle or my side love, my true love, whilst I'm in my 9-to-5, so that I can then jump. But I always notice that one of the patterns that happens is, in that discovery, we go to shame. I can't believe I think this. I can't believe I've been doing this job for that long. Or if it's a relationship thing, I can't believe I've been with this person for that long. Because I noticed that pattern, that's what I really started to coach to, even before we got into the like, this is what I want to do, and creating goals. Like, I'm like, Matt, we need to do some foundational work, because I know from patterns and habits that as soon as you start discovering what's possible, you're going to shame yourself or guilt yourself in some way. And that becomes a distraction to all of the possibilities. So we've got a way to work through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you talked about, you were a partner on as one of your identities, I guess you can say, where last week we had Trevor Stevenson on. Him and I had a great conversation. And I can just think of how a person can, especially when they know somebody, not want to show them the full self or their full bits, right? Like all the good and the bad. And I see a lot of people where when they're looking at maybe trying to look at patterns or trying to enhance themselves or come to a space where they have to name it, as you said, and I love that, where they don't want to do it with a friend. They don't want to do it with a loved one. They don't want to do it with someone that knows them. It's easier for someone to go to a complete stranger and to give them all the bits, the good and the bad. And I just started to think of, why are people this way? Why are people more in the mindset of telling a stranger everything that is going on in their life rather than the people that they love the most?
Mhm. I think that comes down to judgment, the belief or the perception of being judged. And with that stranger, you likely, or we have the perception, I'm not going to see you again, so I'm cool. I'm cool with you. I can say this to you, that way. And so if it's family, or even if you're in a group, so there's a familiar group, right? So Trevor and I both run some groups, and sometimes the hesitation, it's the same, it's similar, even though they're strangers that they're coming in with. There's a belief also. So there's a judgment towards myself that, well, I'm such a problem. And I'm the only one in the world that has this problem. So I don't want to go in a group with other people because they're perfect and I'm not. And I don't want to show that my imperfections. Right. So I think the underlying thing to me, Michael, is that's judgment. So that's self-judgment. And I'm also judging others, even when I'm positively judging them, as in they're better than me. They're probably more perfect than I am. I'm still judging them. Right. And so even a positive judgment is a judgment. So I think that's what happens. So even if it's, I don't want to come. So when people do couples work with me, there's often that too, is like, I don't want you to hear us both talk about each other, how we actually do. Whereas I'm not concerned about them and their like who they are and what they think about themselves. I'm more concerned about, I just can see the pattern. So it's above all of that, not in an elitist way, but it really is like, I'm just looking for the pattern that is creating dysfunction. And so it's so, the beauty of that, Michael, it's like that pattern is neutral, that way it's just this neutral entity, right? And energy and creature in between the two of you. And if we can find that neutral creature together and we can all look at it and sit around it and hold it and, take care of it, we can address it in a really beautiful way. But judgment will get in the way of it.
Yeah. You talked about patterns that can create dysfunction, and helping people with those can definitely help them maybe attain a mindset that's more clairvoyant, where they can see things better. Is there ways that after they find this dysfunction, where we start to look at the patterns that are good, that help them become better, that help them uplift their days, their weeks, their months, their years in general? Or is it so much of, let's fix the problem and allow you just to naturally live your good flow patterns?
That's such a great question. I think both happen, but really, I don't spend a lot of time and I wouldn't even say it that it goes this way, that this is bad.
Mm-hmm.
It really is, to me, just kind of looking at it as such this neutral entity, that this is the relationship, right? So for example, when someone says to me, I want to be a better communicator, and that could be at work, right? Or with their family, it doesn't matter where. I always ask them, like, give me an example when you think you weren't that. And when they describe that, Michael, I'm like, okay, good. So what's the relationship? What are you seeing? And they'll say, well, I'm really great when I'm with Michael. He's a buddy of mine. We hang out. We go on ranches. It's cool. But when I'm with my dad, everything goes out the window. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, let's just go and explore that. And so to me, it's like this fun exploration, like put on your exploration hat, get your backpack, and, there's tools in there you don't even know, actually, because I've put some stuff in there too. And then let's go explore it. So what I think is sometimes missing is that people think that they've got to go and over-explain and tell me how bad it is and all that. I'm like, no. I'm really just looking at, can you see the relationship there? Why does it work out super well with Michael and not here? That means when you can do it with Michael, it means you already know how to do it. So that's something different here, right? And so let's see what's actually showing up. Like, so really, what is the thing? What's the actual thing? You said it was communication, but actually you know exactly what to say. Why is it different with your dad, as an example? So what I find then is we go into, yes, this, like, what am I stepping into then next? So if I can see the pattern, then I go, what is now the pattern that, because I see the relationship, what's the pattern that I want to step into and practice more so the brain makes more connections and, with that versus the other one, right? And so that when you have, you sort of, if I look at it this way, when the brain has that choice point where it goes, okay, wait a second. I said that I could do this with Dad and, because I did it with Michael, it can actually pause and say, oh, yeah, I can take this path. Let me just try it out. The other one, I know it super well. I know exactly what's going to happen. Same thing I did with Dad last time. So it is really about let's try this new path. Go and try it out. See what happens. And that's really what it is, instead of the you're so bad because when you were 4, this happened. No. It could be. But to me, it's let's build those connections so that it's you're more likely to go and take that path and venture there to see, what does it tell you? What are you informed with now? What do you know now that you didn't know before?
I like this idea of paths. And when I used to live in Connecticut, I did a lot of hiking. I would go hiking every single weekend with my dog because my dog would be at home. We would go play fetch and I would throw the tennis ball and she would run and she'll get exhausted, which is good because a tired dog is a happy dog and it's a good dog. So I would take her out on these long hikes every Saturday, 10 miles. And sometimes in the winter, there was snow on the mountaintop. So then you would have to have your snowshoes. And I always just found that to be an enjoyable experience, just to go with me and my dog and to see what would happen. I didn't have a plan in mind where I would go. Sometimes I got lost and I always found myself at the end of it. But this idea of paths, and sometimes when you go into, hiking trails or just, walks that have been treaded amongst a lot of people, they create these trails and they become extremely easy to see, right? They're visible where you can say, okay, this is where most people have gone. And then you can see maybe some leaves that haven't been walked upon. You could say, no one has gone this way before. And sometimes I would say, let's go venture off into these leaves. Let's go off the beaten path and let's go into a new area, a new vicinity where I think of how many people, they just stay in the path of life, right? They just say that this is the human thing to do. A wild animal might see a path and they might stay there because it might be easier, especially in the snow. But if they're trying to get away from this aspect of being human, they will go on that unbeaten trail. They will go in the leaves. They would find a tree that was never touched or climbed that doesn't have the scent of a human. And I just think of how so many people, they reject this idea of being human in the sense of exploration, of trying new things. They say, oh, I have to be a lawyer, I have to be this, I have to be that. And it's the stigma of, if you're not this, then you're a nobody. Versus you can be whatever you want, because I'm sure if someone, let's say I go into a first grade classroom and I say, well, I'm a mindset coach. They'll say, what is that? Right? Versus I'm a policeman. You're a policeman. You carry a gun. You're a firefighter. Oh, you're driving the fire truck. I love the fire trucks. So it's like they have this idea of jobs that are going to give you status and these other jobs that might create more meaning and more fulfillment in the end. It's just as if we have been bred to believe that these high-end jobs or these high value jobs are going to be, what people should be looking at. And I can see it happening with the younger generation where they can only see what is, given to them. Now we look at the 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, they're YouTubers, content creators, right? They have found a different path for themselves. But before that, they were in that status quo of, if I don't have this career, then I'm going to be a nobody. And we're starting to get away from that a little bit, but it still seems as if we still have a lot of work to do there in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. The path analogies, I want to continue off of that because when you were describing, I'd gone for a run this morning, when you were describing about how animals will sometimes go on that path, sometimes you can see if you're in a space where a deer are, for example, they will create their own path, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in ways we do that too, but it is easy for us to go on a path that's well trodden, right? And when we ask these questions of ourselves, like, what do I want to do? Can I make a mid-career shift or whatever, an early career shift? I think what happens is we don't follow so in this, I'm going to make a big play on words here, our sense. So If you watch a dog, as you say, like if you let them loose when you go on a trail, they will go off and they will follow scents. They will literally smell for something that they connect with that will lead them to something else, to something else, to something else. But in essence, if we use the words, our own, like the word SENSE, so our ability to sense, we could do the same thing. We could say, I know this is well trodden, but can I sense into where I must go next, which will then have me sense into where I'm to go next. And I think because we don't use more of our senses, actually, that we tend to miss the messages. And so I think it's just so interesting, like when I'm helping people with spotting patterns, it's that part of it is, can I start to understand and sense into more than just what the intellect is inviting, what my brain is saying? There's so much more that we perceive, like we perceive through touch. We perceive through smell, of course, and taste. Energy, we can feel it. You can walk into a room and no one says anything to you. Hey, Michael, no one says anything to you and you're like, ooh, the energy is thick in here. We perceive in so many ways and we are so disconnected from it. So I love, love, love reconnecting to nature. Even in my coaching, we could be on a virtual call and I love to bring in the elements to see like, what's flowing? That's water, I can tell when someone needs to ground, right? And people will tell me they don't use that language, but it's like they're starting to use the broadness and the capacity and the breadth of our senses to sense into what is next. And in ways it's funny because, our ancestors knew that, right? And many ancestors, of course, knew that. Yet we're so disconnected that people want it to be packaged up and sold back to them, So I was just really struck by you sharing about your dog and, scenting, smelling things, and really that they're scenting to sense where they are connected and what they must do because, they have a whole routine about territory and protection. And also, if they ever got lost, they would find their way back home because of that. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, very true. And it's just so funny that this conversation is going this way because I know a lot of people, they're so worried about this human aspect, especially with technology today. Not even, worrying about animals anymore. It's the AI technology or era where people feel as if they're going to lose their jobs, they're going to lose their humanity because a computer can do something possibly better, right? And this is this idea of perfection, where it's like, oh, I can't do that as quick as a computer. But I remember there was it was my computer class in my elementary, and I forget the teacher's name. Very nice lady though. She basically gave us a test, and on the test was a 10-question test. The 10th question was, who is smarter, humans or computers, right? Probably 60% of the class put computers. And this is in 1990 or something, right? So this is a long time ago, where they were already in that mindset of computers are better than humans. And the teacher went on to say, well, who built those computers, right? Who programmed all the things that they have to feel, right? Because we can say that what makes a human human are our senses, right? Are being able to feel emotions. But we can program a computer to feel emotion, right? Or pain, like how they have the computers where dentists will go in, and if there's a certain amount of pain, that there'll be some level of reaction in the computer. And this is just to show that a lot of people have stopped feeling human, right? They just live behind a screen today. They live in a world that's disconnected from each other, right? They don't recognize that the food that they're eating has come from a farmer or someone who has grown them. It's just like, oh, well, this is just what it is. And they are trading their time for money and their money for the resources that they think that they did all by themselves. And yet we live in this world where we need people, right? Like we can't just say, okay, well, I'm this lone warrior, I'm this lone wolf, I'm this boss man, I'm this boss babe, and I could do everything by myself. There's going to come a point where you need to lean on somebody, where you need to rely on somebody, whether it is, oh, my car broke down, let me go see the mechanic, right? Did you learn how to work on your car? Maybe you did, right? Well, let's not use that analogy then. Well, you want to get a house, or are you going to build the house, right? Are you going to procure the lumber? Are you going to forge the nails? It goes into all of those aspects where you can do every little piece, but how time consuming that would be. And many people, they might not even want to add those tools to their toolbox. For example, I don't think, well, I mean, I'm more open to things, but let's say if I had to learn how to build skyscrapers, I might say that's kind of cool, but it's not like my passion. It's not my gift to build skyscrapers. Yeah, sure, I could be good at it. I can learn to love it, but that's not something that I'm forward in thinking. And so when we're trying to get back to this idea of humanity, when we're trying to get back to this idea that everyone has a role, everyone has a job, everyone has a playbook that they can be a part of, right? They're a part of that play to make it either successful or not successful. And I could just see how many people will run away from that book. They will run away from being a part of the team, being a human in the world today, right? Because they feel as if they can do it all by themselves. And I know you do a lot of group gatherings where you help people get back to this humanity, whether it just be understanding themselves or possibly understanding who they can be.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much that I'm struck by, Michael. You just dropped so many gems in that. Do you know that?
Yes.
So many. So many. That's what you do. Yeah. I wanted to say I'm going to lead to that. So yes, the AI is such an interesting thing. I love what you shared though, is it's that pattern of knowing that we are the ones who are feeding it. So humans are feeding it. And then we are like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. Which also means we're amazing because we're feeding it, right? I think the actual reality is that what I'm seeing is I agree with you that we do need to rely on each other. We still do. That may change over time. I don't know. I don't know if this will be after my lifetime, but we do. I don't hold all the expertise and I never have. My parents never did. And so my kids don't right now. So I will need to ask Michael things. I'll need to rely on him for other things. So I love when you said lean on me, I actually felt touched. Like I could feel something in my throat where I was like, yes. There's this bit of this ache for humanity where I think if we hide behind technology, we realize that we might not realize that we're using it actually to be connected to the human in each other. That's what we're doing it for, We're commenting on posts, we're following influencers, we are making decisions based on influencers about what to buy, right? Like all of that is like an ache for our own connection to humanity. That's what we're doing. Right. So even though it becomes comparison and we know how that's stealing away from our humanity, we know that that's why we're doing it. Sorry, I think we are forgetting that that's why we are making those connections. It's actually to be connected. And we know that about the brain. We know that about humans is that we want to belong. We want to be together. We need together. For me, what I'm loving is I love working with people who are feeling the energy of that, like, holy smoly, right? Like we got to stay connected. We got to do that. I do need to lean on Michael and Michael will need to lean on me. I'll need to lean on someone that I don't even know when I take the bus that is all AI generated, like whatever, and I missed the bus and I realized that I dropped my pass. I'm going to need to ask someone about, for help. So I have created Feel Human 3 years ago. And it was based on that. It was that people who were saying, I don't want to lose my connection, or I'm noticing that there are things that are happening because of how the influence of social media and all my, they say comparison is the thief of joy, right? So because people are so influenced and comparing themselves about, even when they think it's not real, what they as influencers post, they're still feeling that pull of like, ooh, am I measuring up? Am I doing the right thing? Do I look young enough? Am I slim enough? Am I big enough? Am I round enough? Am I rich enough? Like all of that. We know that's happening. So Feel Human was created to continue to feed this community who wants to keep their humanness. And we started by looking at 4 areas that actually takes people out of humanity and creates a disconnection. And that is taking things personally, the incapacity to set and keep healthy boundaries, the incapacity to let things go, and forgiveness, a need for forgiveness. And I just noticed that over years, that for 21 years of coaching, that anytime I'm coaching someone, I could say that it has, what their coaching challenge has to do with anyone or a combo of any of those 4 areas. And so we gather to do the work ourselves so that we can stay in connection with others.
I can see in those areas where many people will struggle because when it's rare that my wife and I would get in an argument where we're like, yeah, I'm done with you. I don't want to talk to you for a bit. And then this idea of, the forgiveness aspect, like, can I forgive them for what they did? I feel as if they betrayed me. And again, it's super rare. We do have a good relationship, but I know there's many people in the world, especially when we start to, put in the word partners or marriage, it becomes almost a landfill or like a landmine field where people are like, well, I haven't had that experience, and people will shy away from finding someone that they can love or spend their life with, and they would just rather, I'm just going to do everything by myself, going back to that lone wolf idea where their boundaries are theirs and they don't have to worry about anyone else's. They say that if I can just, be self-sufficient and self-sustained, maybe get a cat or a dog, and, maybe I can find happiness in that solitude. And I think there is going to be uh, different folks that are going to see it a little bit differently. For example, a monk who's in a monastery, possibly by himself, doing meditation. He's learning about himself. He's learning to accept that peace. These monks don't just simply stay in the monasteries. They allow people to come in, to speak, to learn, to ask questions. He goes into town where he would meet people and have a relationship. It's not so much of, I'm living this life and I'm, in this Zen. And I know a lot of people, when they get into this space of wanting to do yoga or meditation or just even work on mindset, they feel as if they have to do it by themselves, not so much in a group setting where it's like, hey, I'm working with a group on all of these aspects. And instead of me saying, okay, let me do it by myself. And I know Hollywood doesn't do a good job at portraying this because it's always the hero that can go in and just conquer everything, and then it's like, I want to be that hero. I want to be that person who can come from nothing and win at the end. And I think, excuse what the human feeling and the human reality is, that we need each other, that we need to lean on people for our advancement. Because when I was in elementary school, I couldn't have done it without my teachers helping me going up through the grades. And then even in college, having all of my teachers, and then in business, my mentors, where people think as if very much in education. I'm not sure if you ever had this for yourself, but I remember when I was in school, I can't wait till I'm done with school so I can stop learning, so I can stop reading books, so I can stop, wasting time behind a desk or behind a book. And now I can't get enough of it. And it's this idea of maybe being naive or maybe not fully understanding, what the world is trying to teach us. And I know sometimes, people will keep on making mistakes and it will only become more severe until the world is saying, you're going to learn the hard way rather than the way that was more approachable, more palatable. And I just find it amazing how people, they wait for trauma, they wait for hardship in order to change, rather than saying, hey, let me seek a group, let me seek people who are just actively looking at becoming better in their life.
Yeah, totally. It's really interesting because we're in a time where, like, saying that you do therapy is trendy, right? Like, it's actually popular, and it's, and what I find in particular in the, like, Afro Black Caribbean community is speaking about therapy or coaching just wasn't a thing. And I work a lot with executives and managers and here in Canada in the government and in corporations, and it's really interesting to see the shift of being a little bit more open, even though culturally it's not as comforting. One of the things that I think, and I'll tell you why I started to Feel Human, was I was more interested in, with all that's happening in the world and many examples of leadership in the world that are destructive. I know that my brain and mind is easily as fickle as it is strong, just like anyone else's. And I wanted to stay in the most beautiful way, irrespective of what is happening globally. I wanted a place where people actually could come and say, actually, if I notice that those 4 areas, personalization, letting go, forgiveness, and boundaries, that they can keep us so stuck that we end up doing and saying things and being in the world in ways, using our power in ways that are so destructive if they're not handled well. So really, the Feel Human was really about, if I can feel the humanity in me And I can metabolize the hurt that comes from taking things personally. Right? Because so again, you think of world issues like things that have happened that aren't in my own country, but are affecting me personally in my own body. Yeah. That means like their influences are great in our world. Then there could be something that happens literally on my street to me. Right. But I'm influenced because of the reach. Of course, I know this sounds so like, I don't know, trite maybe, but because of social media, like what's happening to me here is also as impactful as what I'm seeing and is influencing my behaviors, my thoughts, and the ways that I'm viewing people. So Feel Human was really about when I feel the humanity in me and I metabolize the pain that comes from wherever those sources are that are causing personalization or me, I'm holding on to things instead of letting go, or I'm not able to forgive, even if it's someone who has nothing to do with my life, because that's what happens when we watch the news.
Mm-hmm.
Or that I'm not even being boundaried in myself, where I'm like just kind of letting things slide and come into my mind. That's also a boundary that I need to take. Then I have a good chance that I am going to create harm in the world in some way. And I mean harm, not necessarily going out to physically hurt someone. I mean that I'm going to get irritated with my partner or with my kids. And they're like, what did I do to deserve this? You just asked me to do the dishes. You don't have to yell at me, or whatever. Like, I mean like that. If we catch those moments, we're catching the bigger moments. And so I know that when we catch the humanity in ourselves and we metabolize pain together, what we actually realize is how connected we are. So when you were speaking just now, I was thinking it's really to notice that what we're really talking about here is that we really are so connected. And that when we understand our connection, then all of these things that have been divisive for us fall off. And then we can lean on each other, no matter what we look like, no matter what our gender preferences, no matter, like human to human, we're able to support each other. That's really what this is. So it's us saying, yes, we're going to, as Resma Menachem says, we're going to get our reps in. We have to do this mind work the same way, and this whole work and this energy work, same way you're going to work out at the gym. Like you got to get your reps in if you want your reps in, if you want your muscles to grow. It's the same thing.
Yes. And I found something amazing the other day, because you don't necessarily think about it, where people will go to the gym and train to failure, but they won't do that in life. And I said, wow, people don't want to fail in life.
Can you say that again, please? Say it again, please.
Yes.
Right?
People will train to failure in the gym, but they won't do it in their own personal life. And it's amazing how people are so afraid to fail. And failure is literally how you grow. And our conversation today is definitely one where people can see the growth that is a possibility in their life. And of course, they have to seek some help. They have to seek some guidance and maybe even seek failure to a certain extent. But it's not to fail habitually, continually. It's to fail upward, right? To fail forward, Denzel Washington would say, fail forward. This idea of we are making progress at becoming the person that we want to become. Arnold Schwarzenegger says that you have to fail. He knew so in the gym as well. When he was going into the gym, when he was going to auditions to be a big time Hollywood actor, he knew he had to fail. It wasn't always, let me do this role, let me go for this audition, let me go for this interview, and everything was just given to you when you saw fit. But the world doesn't see that. The world sees if you are ready or not. And if you're not ready, then you need to build yourself to become the person that is worthy for what the world wants to present to you. All of this is to say that our conversation is many different aspects, many different levels. And this idea of feeling human is something that I really want you to pay heed to today, because our world is so convoluted by technology and so many distractions where you might not feel as prominent in your life anymore. If you're a family man or woman, you might not feel as your worth is there anymore. And I will say that if you look in the mirror and you can say that I am worthy, then you can start to believe that. And Dale, our conversation, like I said, a wonderful conversation. I know our time is running low, but if you could, can you tell us some final words, some final thoughts, and how people can find you, reach out, and begin working with you?
Absolutely. You can find me at dale@ConsciousLead.life. And I imagine we'll be able to put that in the show notes or something. One thing I do want to say is that we have such a gift to know each other. And so I agree with you, Michael. It is that you are so worthy and so deserving of life and all the goodness. And to have a community to come to, even if your community is a person of one, but as long as they are someone who supports you in your growth, you will be able to do and be whatever you need to do. And I just want people to know that, because sometimes we think that our community needs to be huge, or that we don't have community, but even being able to speak with one person is a gift. And so I welcome a conversation, and always happy to help. Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
All right, perfect. And I love what you said toward the end. You said that if we pay attention, we're able to catch those moments, and we can catch those bigger moments that are truly going to mean or be something meaningful for us. And I like to say something akin to that. And I always say the little things add up to the big things, because people think that they have to do something grandiose today, that if they don't change their life to some huge degree, that it's not even worth it. But today, I just want you to start the smallest possible step that you can make, where you know you can do it habitually, where you could do it today, you could do it tomorrow, you could do it for a week, a month, a year, and then a lifetime. This is something where I have found the best ways to do it is with a guide, a coach, a mentor, someone that can hold you accountable, someone who can hold the space when you need it held, because not every day you're going to be 100%. But if you can give 100% of what you got every single day, then that's when the magic truly starts to really take hold of what the world has for us. So Dale, I loved our conversation. As I said earlier, Trevor was right when he said that you are an amazing person, and I just loved our conversation today. So keep on with the work that you're doing. Keep on making a positive impact in the world and being the influence you are to so many people.
Thank you, Michael, so much. Thank you for allowing me to be with you today. It's just such a gift, such a gift.